galvanized.
All right, it is 3:01, April 23rd. We'll call the meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Please silence your cell phones and let's take roll. Or let's take roll when Paula gets back. You know what? I'll take roll. George McQuistion, here. Jeff Struble. Here. Betsy Brunstetter. Lisa Cronister. Here. Brian Fitzsimmons. Matt Guillory. Long Nguyen. John Robeson. Here. Okay, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have a quorum. So, approval of the minutes, item 2A, are there any questions or concerns about the minutes? If there is no objection, we will consider them approved by unanimous consent. Items 3 and 4, there are nothing below. 5A, 804 Northwest 8th Street, continuance request. Any questions or motions about this item? If there are no objections, we will consider that continuance approved by unanimous consent. Item 6A, cases for individual consideration, 730 Northwest 23rd Street. If one idea was, and just let me ask Ken, just let me ask a question before you. We have Gaiudes, and then we have Deba K, and then in the middle we have the Gold Dome by Teamco. If there's no objection, because there are similar issues for Gaiudes and Deba K, if we want to go ahead and proceed with the Teamco case, is there any objection to that? If we were to go ahead and do that.
You need to make a motion to do.
Okay, I'll move that we move the item 6B to the top of cases for individual consideration. Oh. Okay, I cannot make that motion, so do we have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion that we move item 6B to the top of the list.
Okay, that is Fitzsimmons, Robeson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that carries. Any opposed? Item 6B, 112 Northwest 23rd Street. Michael?
Yes, this item is before you is the Gold Dome, and it has basically three components going on here. One, of course, is the resurfacing of the roof and the paint colors on the side of the building. In addition to that, they also have a proposal for a new storefront door and stairs on the northwest quadrant of the round portion of the building, and a proposal for a new screen fence using a galvanized metal deck. There are samples of the paint color in your packet, but I have chips here that I can pass out to you, give you a better feel for what the colors are. And there is, besides that, I do want to point out that the door and steps that are proposed at this time are identical to the doors and steps that were approved through a CA in 2010, and that the screen wall was also approved by our prior CA in 2005. In addition, there's one slight recommendation, a change to our staff recommendation, and that is on item 2. Actually, on both items 1 and 2 in the recommendation. The applicant representative last week asked that I change the recommendation on the variance to a continuance on the item of the fence to the next meeting on May 28th in order to give them some time to consider their alternatives with regard to that fence design. And that completes our presentation. I'm prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
All right. Could we just, and I know that it was addressed in the packet, but could we just speak briefly about the color of the dome and the choice to go with the paint like you did?
Sure. It's actually a metallic finish.
And it's the same metallic finish they used at the Capitol on some of the gold there when the state Capitol was redone. We initially looked at various methods for plating the dome or to re-anodize it, and the only way to re-anodize it would be to cut it apart, and therefore that would destroy it. So anodizing is out. There is just physically, it's impossible to return it to its original finish. So we literally looked all over the world for various solutions to get as close as we could, and the only other solution that we found would have made it look like a gold-plated watch, and we didn't think that that would be very good either, and it was $600 a square foot. So we were looking at several $1 million. And so the next best option that we came up with is the metallic finish. It's an iridescent gold, and then we put several layers of that on, and then we have a few more layers of high gloss finish to go on top of that to bring the shine out. And it is admittedly not the same color as it was before, but unfortunately that it's just not an option. So we chose the very next best option we could come up with, was to get it as iridescent and gold and shiny as we could possibly get it.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners about this item?
George, at first, when the coatings first started going on, it did seem pretty glaring and just unusual. I drive by there, 1,000 times a week. But now I think the color is spot on. I mean, it is a gold gleaming dome, and it correlates well with the tower.
And it will get shinier too. The weather, we put down one layer and then we get snow, and then we go back and redo it, and then we get rain, and now that we're getting into some good weather, we're going to be able to finish it. We still have several layers to go, so I think it will look even better during the next 30 days.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I'm just curious about the durability of the product. Do you have a spec or anything with you? I wouldn't really expect that you would, but
I'm sorry.
Do you know what the product is that you use?
Do I know what it is?
Yeah.
Do you have I can't tell you personally. I know I've seen it, and I picked it out. I don't know the name of it. Let's see if it's Modern Masters is the manufacturer. They're the only ones in the world that make this kind of metallic finish.
Okay.
And they're out of California.
Is it acrylic or is it elastomeric or?
The actual material, I know I could have sworn that we supplied you all with the specs on it, and I apologize, I don't think I have a copy. Let me look.
Maybe it's in here.
No, it's
See
not.
it.
Now I'm going off memory. It's not an acrylic. I do know the gloss is a polyurethane.
Yeah.
It's a polyurethane gloss. Are those the specs? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That'll be fine then. Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. I'll look this up.
Okay.
Were there any other questions? Anyone in the audience had a question or would like to speak on this item? Any motions from the commissioners?
So, Michael, are we just motioning on number E2?
It's the items for consideration, A1, the main building, the resurfacing of the dome, repainting the building, installing a new storefront door, constructing new concrete steps with aluminum railings. That's one piece. Then the screening piece that involves the new fence, that's the part. So A2.
Under item E1, we have a recommendation that includes a request for a variance on the screen fence. And at this point in time, the applicant had asked us to, instead of doing that, which they may ultimately end up doing, at this time they wanted to continue the item on the fence and come back to you on May 28th to talk about that issue further when they have had more time to consider their options with regard to the design of that fence.
So Michael, just so we're clear, an appropriate motion might be to approve. Oh, I'm sorry, Marva, yes.
Does this include painting the brick and the cast stone on the building? This is the first motion?
Did you want to, yes, it would. Did you want to speak to
I'll
this?
speak on that.
Sure.
Marva Ellard, 1521 North Chartel Avenue. Similar to Lisa, I drive by that building numerous times a day, and I think the applicants have done a dutiful job looking for options on the roof, but I think painting the brick and the concrete on the main building has negatively impacted the visual originality and style of the building. It is not the gold dome that we've known for all these years, and it's become cartoonish and garish to me. In the 90s, Circle K painted the brick on the convenience store across the street on Western, and they were asked to remove that paint, and they did, and we have a red brick building that is not 1/10 the significance of this building, but it's a red brick building. And to me, it's entirely inappropriate for this structure to have been painted, and I would ask that you all ask them to remove the paint from the concrete and the brick on this building.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions about that?
I have one question. I know the concrete was painted. Was the brick painted as well?
Yes.
And the concrete was previously painted, and that was what I was thinking. But so the brick was painted as well.
Can I respond? Yeah. Yes, we did. We looked at that pretty hard, and we just felt that the tan was very dull and boring, and that the dome was spectacular, but the building underneath the dome was very blah. And we wanted to make it more contemporary. We wanted to bring it back to life, to give it a life going forward. And so we chose metallic finishes, the copper. We're applying a chemical treatment to the copper, which is causing it to get the green patina. And then the platinum is just something that we felt would match. We didn't think the tan matched at all. It looked unfinished.
I'm another one that passes by this building a lot, but I'm having a hard time pulling up a mental image of exactly what it looked like before. Do we have any before and after photos of the entire building or the brick in particular?
No, we don't.
There's a lot of stuff out there. I don't think there's anything here.
My recollection, the concrete was indeed a tan color, which would have been similar to the original concrete finish. I have no idea if originally the concrete was painted from day one or not. And then the brick I know was never painted. It was a dark brown, as I recall.
I can tell you the concrete was painted when we had the building, when we got the building. The concrete was painted, and it was, but both the brick and the concrete looked run down to us, and it was also a lot of staining on it.
I tend to agree that the bottom of the dome is not necessarily what I would have chosen for a new paint job. What are the options? If the concrete was already painted, I'm not sure there are options. If the brick was not painted, there is something to be said for that.
Well, there are no provisions in the UD district that talk about painting unpainted brick or painted brick. That's all mostly in downtown and Bricktown. Furthermore, there are no guidelines in the UD overlay district that speak to appropriate colors to give the guidance, any guidance to the commission on what is a good color and what is a bad color. The only guideline that we have to work with is one that talks about any exterior change that changes the visual appearance of the building, which this clearly has done. So it's really a matter of the commission to determine whether or not it's an acceptable change to the visual appearance or not.
Do we have a rough idea of how much brick we're talking about in terms of square footage or linear footage?
There's a lot of glass on this building, but there's also a lot of brick. I'd say you're probably talking about, 50% of the exterior of the walls of the building.
I can tell you the majority of the brick is on the back side. The 23rd Street side and the Classen side are mostly glass and the concrete.
Well, it's usually a really bad idea to paint brick because it usually causes the brick to fall apart over a period of time. That's my objection to painting brick.
But it was painted before they painted it, so there's not much.
Yeah.
It was painted before they
Yes.
painted it? I didn't realize that.
When they took possession of it,
Well, it can be cleaned nonetheless.
sure.
Whether or not, and how they clean it matters too, because that can also destroy the face of the brick, which is the weatherproof surface.
We did use the same material from Modern Masters, and it's designed for brick and various surfaces, and it has, I want to say it has a 20-year warranty on it, and when we found them, we saw numerous examples of historic structures literally all over the world that have used this material. So just deferring to other people's decision, I would say that it's a very good quality. I mean, we didn't just put some Sherwin-Williams paint on there.
Yeah, the paint on the brick is more about the nature of a brick than it is about the paint. It can be a great paint, but a lot of times it blows the faces off those bricks when you do that. But, who knows?
I think my point of view is going to be somewhat different than has been expressed so far. Thank you. The gas station where they had to clean the paint off, that was nothing but brick, and brick was the defining characteristic of that structure, and they took natural brick and painted it white, and I think compromised the defining feature. In my opinion, the defining feature of the Gold Dome is the dome, and it seems like a reasonable effort has been made to try to do as much as can reasonably done, given economic feasibility, to get that as close as possible. I also feel that the saving of the Gold Dome, you cannot talk about that building in isolation apart from economic viability. The lack of potential economic viability is what had most of the citizens here wondering whether it would even be saved or not. So while it might not be my choice in terms of colors, parts of it had already been painted. We don't know if those original colors or not. To try to redo a building and spend money on the large defining features of the structure, but yet to have run-down brick that might adversely impact the view of the building, while admittedly not historic. This is not an HP district, and I feel that what's been done, balancing the needs of trying to preserve the building in the best fashion along with making it economically viable, you're never going to get that balance exactly right. I feel we're close here. That's where I'm coming down on this. I don't know how other people feel, and or if anybody would like to make a motion.
I would motion approval of the work that's been done on the main building, the coating of the roof, the repainting of the main building elements, storefront, and the construction of the steps and landing.
And Paula, would we also ask for a continuance at this point, or would that be a separate motion? You want to do the...
And the continuance of the till the next meeting. Is that May 28th? That's... Or a broader window?
I couldn't hear very well, so.
A continuance till the June meeting for the fence.
Okay, we have a motion to approve items A1, A through D, and to continue item 2 regarding the fence until the meeting in June. Do we have a second? Matt Guillory seconds that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, now item 6A, 730 Northwest 23rd Street.
This item was continued from your meeting in January. Is the Gaiudi's Restaurant and Bar at the southeast corner of Northwest 23rd and Chartel. At the meeting in January, the commission approved a CA that allowed the applicant to refurbish and renovate the building, including the addition of a rooftop deck. The item that was continued from the meeting in January was the proposal for a addition of a outdoor dining patio with a roof and some counter space and landscaping that surrounds that proposed outdoor patio, and this is located in the front of the building adjacent to the eastern property line. Part of the issue at the time in January that caused the commission to continue the item was concern over capacity in the restaurant and a lack of parking. Since that meeting, the applicant has gone out and secured 30 parking spaces at the in a parking lot at the northwest corner of the same intersection. That's Northwest 23rd and Chartel. So we've brought the item back to you for your consideration and determination as to whether or not the proposed outdoor patio and landscaping should be approved along with the rest of the building. We're prepared to respond to any questions the commission may have.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Ken Fitzsimmons, Task Design. Basically, he said it very well. At the time, it was continued because there was concerns about parking, and since then, Wayne and Jared have received some off-site parking agreements for at least 30 spaces on the site northwest of the property at Chartel and 23rd, and they're currently working on getting more off-site parking agreement. So as far as addressing the parking concern, we think that they've made great strides since then, and they're not sure if they want to build a patio immediately, but they would like to have this option, and that's why we're here today.
Are there any questions for Ken before we hear from members of the audience?
How long's the parking agreement in place for?
It's currently 6 months, but I think with an option to renew.
And I would like to make a clarifying comment. I think it's great that you all have got this parking agreement in place. I think it shows a good faith effort to try to take care of your patrons and to have them stay within the commercial district of Northwest 23rd. But I don't want people to lose sight of the fact that parking is not required here on this section of Northwest 23rd. Just before we go too far down that road. It's not a requirement in the code. So with that said, are there people from the audience who would like to speak on this item?
Okay, I have not heard anything that was said. I'm sorry. Are you going to build a patio in front? Is that what you're wanting to do?
Yes,
I'm sorry. Are you wanting to build a patio in front of the building?
yes, that's the idea.
Okay, where in front?
Well, along 23rd Street.
I know, but next to the retaining wall or over closer to Chartel or?
Next to the retaining wall.
Okay. I have a comment to make on this. Less than 1 month ago, March the 28th, 4 young men hit that retaining wall and died. I woke up when they hit the wall, and I ran outside, and I got to watch them die. And now they want to put tables to eat and drink and be merry in the very spot those young men died. And I think this is tantamount to the most ultimate disrespect and mockery of 4 young men's lives that I have ever heard. Thomas and Timothy Tran, who were brothers. Victor Trong, who was their first cousin. Michael Lynn, who was a good friend. All 4 of these young men died right where they went to party. And I just object to it so much. I just object to it. I think it's a sin to do that, and I think it's bad karma, bad juju, whatever you want to call it. I see nothing good happening from putting tables right there where those young men lay dead. And we are putting a memorial right there in my yard, on my property, right there where they died. So I hope that's not going to be off-putting to someone who is sitting to eating and drinking and partying to have to look at that memorial for those young men. That's all I have to say. I won't be able to hear you if you comment because of my hearing problem. And my hearing problem doesn't apply to cars and noise outside. I hear that really well inside my house. And I thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? Any comments from the commission or questions, further questions? I think, Michael, I would like to, one point that we probably should touch on right now, given some of the correspondence we've received, and we've received some emails from some of the residents of the neighborhood regarding this case and the next case, which involve outside entertainment areas, about potential noise and traffic impacting the neighborhoods. And I did want to talk about the noise issue simply to highlight that it's covered in the code. Michael, I don't know if you want to give us a kind of a basic overview of that.
Sure. This property backs up to a residential zoning district on the north side of Northwest 22nd. And the noise ordinance stipulates decibel sound limits coming from commercial zones into residential zones. And the limits right now in the ordinance from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. are 55 decibels for 90% of the time, and they're allowed to go up to 65 decibels for a 10% period of time. And those are typically measured with devices that are specified in the ordinance and done at 15-minute intervals. From 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., the noise level for decibels is reduced to 50 decibels for the 90%, so that's down from 55 to 50. And then for the 10% criteria, it's reduced from 65 decibels to 60 decibels. And enforcement of this is typically kind of done in a tag team fashion between the standard code enforcement officers that the city has. They typically operate, however, from only 8 to 5. However, if there are complaints received by the action line, they can schedule after-hours site visits for those code enforcement officers to come out and take noise readings. And additionally, the noise readings after 5 p.m. are often, the complaints are often received by the police department, and the police will respond and take measurements as well.
So the code does address the noise issue?
It does.
Okay, Ken?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Kyle Walker, 315 Northwest 22nd Street. In regards to the noise ordinance, is the decibel increase above background, and what's the background? And is it measured at the fence line? Is it measured?
It's fence line.
Is it from inside my bedroom?
Fence line.
Okay, fence line. So at the fence line, we're saying 55 decibels. Is that above background, or is that including background?
That's including background.
Because, I mean, we've got a train that goes by our house, and that probably puts out about 55 decibels right there. So any noticeable increase would be a violation. In my, you know, without having any measurements on hand, I'd say we're getting there pretty quick. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that's above the background.
Right, but based on the duration of a train, that's probably under the 10% factor, so that's more, it's under the 60 decibels for 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And also, I think it's important to point out that if you have a zone with a higher noise threshold backing up to one with a lower, at the border, you go with the lower.
The lower standard applies. That's correct.
Okay.
And there are also allowances for, well, not allowances, but there are things called, pardon me, excessive sound and noise disturbances in the ordinance, which, just for definition, excessive sound is defined to mean sound level which elicits complaints usually independent of each other in the estimate of the sounds being acceptable or unacceptable. And noise disturbance means any plainly audible sound which injures or endangers the safety or health of a human, or a noise or disturbs a reasonable person of normal sensitivities, or endangers or injures personal or real property. And those factors come into play under the section of the ordinance that talks about specific prohibitions. And among those prohibitions are radio, television equipment, electronic audio equipment, musical instruments, and similar devices. And another category is boisterous, belligerent, or clamorous noise making.
Right. So the code addresses those issues right now.
You're saying that people getting drunk on a rooftop bar, the noise level created by that would then possibly impact the... So we're saying that boisterous activity would include that of people enjoying a rooftop bar backing up to 2 homes there. Is it 2 homes? Yeah. And an apartment building across the street. Okay. So long as we're clear that is something that would be measurable as an impact to the noise in the area.
Right. So there are codes, there are decibel levels that could be taken at your property line. My understanding is you back up to the side of Diabetic K.
Yes.
But the same would apply to Gaiudes, that the measurements would be taken at the board of the HP district, and it's up to design and soundproofing and angle and all that of the applicants and the business owners to make sure that they stay within the mandated noise limits. Ken?
To address that issue specifically, they went up on the roof after we had a meeting with some folks from MESTA, or at the last meeting, the Planning Commission meeting, and noise was brought up, and they went up on the rooftop with one of the people that actually had objections to the project and played a speaker at full volume, and they asked the person that lives in Mesta, if it was objectionable, and they went to the edge of the property and they said they could not even hear it. So we feel like that the proximity of this to the street, the white noise of 23rd Street, and the fact that it's up high, I'm not saying that, there could never be a chance of sound coming down, but, sirens, Harley-Davidsons, cars with loud exhaust, those are going to be louder on a much more regular basis than this. And the other thing I'd like to point out in conjunction with Diebeck K, we've had I think Michael has received a petition that we feel like these two projects, this is kind of off tangent, but it's kind of related to this, have been getting put under the microscope because of the particular issues about concerns about noise. And we've had an online petition of people in support of, and a large number of people from Mesta and Heritage Hills are in support of these projects and want to continue to see revitalization of 23rd Street. I understand there were also some letters of support. So we're just saying that we're not trying to minimize the concerns, but we feel like we're doing all that we can to stay within the ordinances, and by and large, there's support to see 23rd Street continue to be redeveloped versus pulling back and doing a suburban type development or something like that. So just wanted to say that about it, and Jared might have a few words about how the test was conducted.
Hi, my name is Jared Friedel, 4525 Georgia Avenue, Oklahoma City. I did sound test with the president of Mesta Park. We put a speaker up on the roof, open air, and turned it up as loud as we could, walked back to 22nd Street, walked all around the building. I bought a decibel reader. Once you got down in the parking lot, the noise from 23rd drowned out all music. Once you got back to 22nd Street, you couldn't even hear 23rd. You heard all 22nd and their surrounding noise. So he agreed that it was not a problem, and that's about it.
Also, another neighbor, a close-by neighbor, Leonardo Baez, lives directly across the street from Gaiudes, and we understand that he is supportive of the project as well. So he is very close proximity to this, and he has no objections to it.
All right. Thank you. Questions, comments?
I'd like to make a motion.
May I ask a question? The only way I know what's going on is to come down here and listen to the meetings, and, I can't hear, so I still go home and don't know what's happening. Is this place going to be open 7 days a week, 7 nights a week? 7 nights a week, until what time?
2 a.m.
I'm sorry?
2 a.m.
2 o'clock in the morning, 7 nights a week, you're going to be open.
If it works out, we're not.
Okay. My goodness.
All right. And Brian? Any other comments? Any other comments from the audience? And ma'am, I did want to reply to you regarding the 4 young men who had an accident at that corner. I understand there are a lot of strong emotions. That we have a very kind of small specified role here, which is to apply relevant parts of the city planning ordinance to design review, and we simply, the issue you raised is outside of our purview. Brian?
Yes, and given that set of requirements that our commission is able to make a decision, there is nothing outside of zoning regulations within our purview that I see objectionable, and I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, that's a motion to approve by Brian Fitzsimmons. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by John Robison. Everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it's approved. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I realize I'm not a planning commission member, but I would oppose Mr. Fitzsimmons' motion, given that he's likely related to the architect. He's related. He has a conflict of interest in the matter.
Well, we have recusal language in our bylaws, and I'll let the motion stand, and we can review that if you have further concerns. All right? Okay. Okay. Next case, item 6C.
Pardon me. This item is for a new restaurant, 3,300 square feet with a 1,100 square foot rooftop deck, and also includes outdoor dining patio area in the front of the building. Also,
Can Michael use the handheld microphone?
hello? No,
Yeah.
it's not working.
Does it work?
It's not working. The project also includes a 29-stall parking lot, includes a sidewalk and driveway along the front of the building, and includes landscaping both in front of the building and in front of portions of the parking lot, and screening to enclose the trash receptacle. This site is located on the south side of Northwest 23rd between Tucker's and Subway, which is Hudson and Harvey, I believe. And we've reviewed the project and found it to be in compliance with all the applicable regulations and design guidelines. Did want to point out that there was an email that did not make it into your packet, and we've provided a copy of that for you at the dais. It's from Mr. Walker. In addition, there are 5 emails in your packet, one against the proposal and 4 in support. And as Mr. Fitzsimmons mentioned earlier, there is an online petition that also applies to this project that has over 800 signatures in support of the proposal. So that completes our presentation. Prepare to respond to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Ken?
Hi. Is there, does this work with slide? Hi, well, she sets it up. Ken Fitzsimmons of Task Design, and again, we're very excited about being part of redeveloping 23rd Street, and we think this is a really great opportunity time right now for what's going on there. And the things that we tried to do here is we tried to balance the need to provide some parking, which parking is not required, and this site is 100 feet by 144 feet, and although parking is not required, our owners were very sensitive to the consideration of that, and so one of our goals was to provide as much parking on site as possible. We also wanted to put the building as close to the street as possible, again, to interact with the street, and also to provide a little bit of a barrier between people that may live behind there. And the other thing that we tried to do is, as this image shows, there are some existing retaining walls here on the site. Let's see. Oh, this one works. Oh. Thanks. There's some existing retaining walls along the site here that we really wanted to save. And going back to the idea about the design here, the notion was about trying to retain a little bit of the fragment of history that we have on the site. It's not a historic site, of course, but there was a little bit of an artifact of a home that used to be there. And looking up the property records, we think that it may have been a home that dated back to the early 1900s. It was purchased in 1911 or 1907, something along the line, the property. And so that was one of our goals. And as you can see, this also provides a nice outdoor patio area. And we picked up the lines from those existing walls, which then generated some of the lines that you see on the facade. And so the whole notion of this is to provide something that's new, but also relates to the past. And let's see, how do we go forward with this? Just roll. There we go. So another view from 23rd Street looking back here. I don't know if we have plans coming up. This is a view from the west side looking east. And the notion here was, again, about getting activity on the street. So we're proposing an outdoor patio area here and a rooftop terrace, which would have walls on the east, the south, and most of the west. So again, most of the activity is directed toward the street, so there's an interaction there. The entry here, the rendering does not show, but there would be a walkway connecting, an accessible walkway connecting to the street up to the main entry, which is on the west side. The one thing I do have to note, since we did these renderings and submitted them for CA, we have learned after going back and forth with plan review that there's a city ordinance that requires new sidewalks if they're beyond the property line to be 6 feet wide. So unfortunately, we are going to have to tear out some of the existing retaining walls, but we're hoping to rebuild them as close to the street as possible or right at the property line. If we build it at the property line, the walkway would be about 7 or 8 feet wide. If we can build it up to the sidewalk, then the walkway would be 6 feet wide. The patio depth then would range anywhere from probably 9 to 12 feet, depending on if we can receive that revocable. But we do feel like it's important to retain this little bit of history and to have this element on the street.
Ken, regarding that retaining wall, what we're looking at in the packet here, does that reflect your recent information?
Yes, I believe the latest site plan that we sent, Michael and I went back and forth on the site plan, some of those particular issues, and the latest site plan does show it with an option beyond the right-of-way or beyond the property line, and then also with an option at the property line if that's rejected.
Okay. And that would hinge on your approval to have to...
We would like to have consideration for both, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the item 2C1 and 2. That outlines both of the options for you. We've been in discussion with Public Works as to whether or not a revocable would be approved for the encroachment of the 2 foot 1 inch that's indicated in item C2. It's kind of up in the air. The bottom line is there's a lot of ADA requirements that come into play with that sidewalk, and
right.
There's also some, I guess, encroachments and street lights and other things that come into play in that area as well. And so it really comes down to whether or not they can satisfy ADA requirements getting through there.
So just so I understand what's behind the two options, the preferred option is to be closer, but
Correct.
If you have to have the sidewalk a certain width based on ADA, et cetera, then
Right.
you would pull back and go with your other option.
Well, with either one, we would provide the width required by the new sidewalk ordinance. It's 6 feet wide minimum.
What's the rationale behind the two approaches, the two options?
For us?
Yeah.
Well, we think that, again, having this as close to the street is a nice thing to do, and so that's why we'd propose to have it set right at the 6 foot line or right at the 6 foot sidewalk. And that's about 2 feet north of the property line.
Gotcha.
And if they reject the building of the retaining wall on the screen beyond the property line, then we would ask for the approval to build the retaining wall up to the property
Gotcha.
line.
So your preferred approach is in the right of way, but
Correct.
if you cannot do that, then that's why you're asking for that second
That's
option to be
correct.
approved now. Gotcha. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no. And so to just walk through some of the materials and things that you'd see from the street, we're proposing full-height glazing along here, along the north facade, to bring as much indirect light. And again, at night, we think that there will be a lot of great light coming out of this, and it'll generate a lot of activity. This is directly across the street from Granddad's and Backdoor Barbecue. And so, again, with all the other things going along there, we think that this will be part of the district activity. The facade here on the west side, we're proposing as a painted fiber cement material, 12 inches wide with vertical seams. We've asked for different options to be approved. One would be just to have a seam that is just a reveal. Another would be to have a T shape that would be projecting just a little bit to give a little bit more definition to the verticality of that element. The idea is that the west facade here, we didn't want to bring in a lot of indirect, harsh summer sunlight, so the windows are a little bit more narrow, and it gives a little bit of playful touch here along that the stair, and suggests the rise up the stair to the patio area. This is a view of the main entry from the west, and we're proposing a synthetic gray stone here with a element that calls out the entry here, painted steel, and again, this fiber cement that we're talking about, and the railing, which would be galvanized or painted metal, and a brick that we're looking at various options, but some sort of gray or tan, very light tan color, something that would be very neutral and play off well with the paint and the galvanized color that we're talking about. Shot from the interior, not really worked out yet, but just to give you a sense of the space. And this would be the rooftop terrace, one possible option. We're still working through with what the lighting, how it would interact, but the idea is that this is the south wall that you see here. It would be some sort of translucent material. We're thinking it's probably a polycarbonate that we would backlight, so the light would be directed away from the people in Heritage Hills, and it would be light shining onto the back of this panel so that it would glow here, and then the bar, which is on the east side, which is again shielded from the south. And another view of the facade with the patio with the elements aligning that we discussed, and again the elements from the retaining wall. And another shot at night. And as Michael mentioned, we have anticipated a little bit of protest because of the noise and things like that. So again, we wanted to mention the petition, and that like Gaiudes, these guys are very serious about being good neighbors. I mean, they want Heritage Hills and Mesta to be good friends because, I mean, that's where a lot of their customers they're hoping will come from. And so it's in the interest of them to make sure that they're good neighbors as well.
Regarding the noise, and Mr. Walker, backing it up to you. So I'm assuming that with the design and moving it near the street and the way you're angling, that you will be prepared for a noise meter to be placed right on the borderline with the HP district at some point in the future.
If it's on the back fence of HP,
Yeah.
that would be, these are the owners, by the way, that would be their decision on that, but I wouldn't think that would be a problem to have a decibel reader at the fence line.
Well, I'm not asking that there be one place. I'm just saying you're prepared in terms of design, and from a business perspective and a design perspective, you're taking into account the noise ordinances.
Yes, I mean, as much as any business that has outdoor dining, the only difference is that, we are proposing a rooftop, but there are currently a lot of businesses that have patio dining.
Right. And I guess to try to get a little bit more specific, the rooftop is allowed as long as, for example, even without a rooftop, you could have a loud mechanical behind your building. But my point I'm making, kind of on Mr. Walker's behalf, is that in the design and the layout of the business, you understand that there are noise ordinances and that there's a certain threshold at that HP boundary, just like in Gaiudes and the tests you did there. Mm-hmm. You understand the same standards apply behind it.
Yes, I mean, they're very aware of that, and again, we're trying to make this as friendly as possible to that effect, placing the building right at the street. I mean, architecturally, I don't know how much more we could do to accommodate the program and to balance those two things. I feel like that what we've done with this project has exceeded what the ordinance requires, as far as there really are no ordinance requirements for the parking, and there's not really mention of designing for acoustics in particular, but we have designed it so that there are walls on most of the sides.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Any other questions?
It's not on that same subject. I think the design does a very good job to address some of the potential concerns. Relating to how this building relates to some of the historic buildings that are in the neighborhood, will there be any brick on the north-facing facade, so the front facing along 23rd Street?
Just at this wing wall, which is on the east side. Let me go back to that would be your view coming from the east going towards the west. And so this is the subway parking lot here.
Okay, so nothing will be built there.
Right, yeah. And I would like to mention too, that, in an ideal world, we would have made this building even closer to the street all the way across, but it just didn't work out with the, discussions about shared parking and things like that. So we really wanted to, again, trying to make this bring back the urban fabric as much as possible, as close to the street, minimize the amount of parking you see from the street. And yes, the brick we're proposing would be, in keeping with what the neighboring buildings are, which is kind of a tannish gray color.
But that's not picked out yet, right?
No, we did bring some options of what we're looking at, but we haven't made selections yet. And if you'd like, I can show you kind of what we have in mind and give you some idea if that's what you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Okay.
Two other quick questions.
Sure.
Before that. The front patio, was that going to be covered, or?
No.
That could be open air.
As you see here, it's open, and again, being on the north, the shade offered by the building, for the most part, except for rain, there's really not a reason we felt like to put a canopy on it. Now, we do have partial canopy. This is a good view of the overall. There is a canopy or a roof over the bar and over part of the dining upstairs, but nothing over at the street.
No tent structures,
Tent structures?
like at Empire?
I'm not aware of that in particular, but no, there's not any portable tents or anything like that we're planning on.
And then lastly, signage. I don't see any signage proposed here. What's the plan?
We talked to Michael about that. We do have some ideas, but it's a little early, and we'd like to flesh it out, so we'd like for a continuance on the signage, or if that can be administratively approved at a later time. Just so you know, the basic concept was maybe to put it over here on the west side, so that works as a way to partially screen the parking, so it would act partially as a screen and also be back from the building a little bit so people can see the drive.
Other questions from the commissioners? No? Anyone from the audience care to speak? Mr. Walker.
Are we just addressing the facade of the building and the patio structure here, or are we discussing all the items on the agenda there? I'm just saying we haven't discussed what I had come here to discuss so far. As far as the way the building looks, I agree. I don't think it fits into a historic neighborhood, but then again, my opinions are my own. So, yeah, as far as retaining walls, helping to keep it in the nature of there were two houses there. That's nothing like two houses. So keeping a retaining wall is kind of a ridiculous argument. Not to mention a petition in favor of this. That's all well and good. I think people on 21st Street and further south are going to have a great time, but those of us who will be directly impacted by the noise and the parking issues, we're not in favor of this at all. I mean, we want thriving businesses on 23rd Street, but a 3,000 square foot building with inadequate parking, we're not happy about that at all.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. My response to that would be that the site, while it backs up to your property, which is in an HP district, this particular site is in a zone, a C4 zone, which is a pretty intensive commercial zone. So in terms of historic features, maybe from an architectural standpoint, kind of, gesturing towards what was there before, it's more of a design issue than a code issue in terms of the layout. And then in terms of the parking, as you've heard us discuss here, by code, there is no parking requirement. Different citizens will have different views on that. That is the way the code is written.
That's fine. I understand that. You guys the city has chosen to enact a code there where there's no other areas in the city I'm aware of, maybe the plaza, and what a joy that place is right now, let me tell you, allows this kind of development. So I'm telling you on behalf of the people that live on 21st Street, when people are parking up and down our street, we're not going to be happy about it. I think the long term, if this thing turns out to be, I'm looking at least 150 seats there. He's going to have 30 parking spaces. Where are 50 plus cars going to go? They're going to go in our streets where we live. That impacts our quality of life. We're not going to just be, oh well, too bad. That's not how we're going to play this. So, long term, it may work out great. I would seriously hope for that. But if it doesn't, if this impacts our lives the way we kind of are fairly sure it will, we will be looking at doing some kind of parking restrictions back there, and I know that's beyond your scope, but I think in planning this, if they're planning to sink a whole bunch of money in this thing, thinking that they can park on our street whenever they want to, they really need to think twice about that. Thank you.
Thanks. What I would say, if you want to get involved, there actually is a study going on right now, sponsored by an area of the city planning department and the Institute of Quality Communities at OU. And I would encourage you to, and I can give you more information, or anyone here can, to get involved in that process now, because the studies are going on right now, and it's addressing just the sorts of concerns you're raising. So there would be that study to get involved with, and then, of course, also the Planning Commission. I believe Commissioner Wright is your ward, or clearly the City Council after the Planning Commission would be a way to get some of these changes put forth. But in the near term, I think getting involved with that study group that's taking place right now would be a good way of trying to get some of your concerns addressed. Any other comments from the audience? Yes, sir.
My name is Nam Nguyen, and I'm part owner potentially to Davakay. Based on the plans that we just to ensure Mr. Walker that we did consider the neighbors around our project, that before we found out that we were building the type of restaurant that we were building, we didn't know that we were required or not required to have parking spaces. So the research that we've done was that per every 100 square foot, you're supposed to have one parking space. So even after the fact that we found out that we didn't even require any parking spaces, we still wanted to add parking spaces to our business. We could have made it a little bit bigger or anything of that matter, because there's no parking space required, because we're only limited to the plot of land that we've bought. But we wanted to do that so we can actually say, okay, for our patrons who come to our restaurant, they have a parking space. So we understand that some people will have to cross the street, but not everyone have to cross the street. Or, hey, even we've already contacted the Subway owner to possibly work something out with parking in his parking space, because he's got a lot of parking in his parking space, because his busiest time is during lunchtime. And we are a full-blown restaurant. We are not a bar. We do intend to close typically on Monday to Thursdays at 10 o'clock, Friday and Saturdays at the latest at midnight. So we have thought about all those little details. On our beginning sketches with Mr. Fitzsimmons on the rooftop bar, we didn't put the awning on there. Before that, we've known that we were supposed to go to the UDC. Before Mr. Walker even sent out his email, we want to put a top awning on the rooftop, because for us to barricade any sound that was going out from our rooftop. So I just wanted you guys to know, and also Mr. Walker to know, that we did do our due diligence before we just asked Mr. Fitzsimmons to just draw something up for us, make it look nice, and hey, and it's just a money pit. Me and my partner's I've been here since '86. My partner was born here, and we want to be a part of the community, and we want to be, like what Mr. Fitzsimmons said, be a good, good neighbors to Heritage Hall and also Mesa Park. But anything that, within reason, we will oblige by Mr. Walker and the neighbors that they would want us to do, because we're here for the long haul, and we want to, make sure that we have a good relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Walker.
Is this the full addressing of the plans? Because I believe it mentioned something about the parking lot itself. Now, we're not talking about the number of parking spaces, we're talking about the parking lot. Have we addressed that yet, or are we getting there?
Generally, the way this works is we review our packets, and if we have issues with certain topics, we'll bring them up, but if we don't,
Okay,
then we won't necessarily bring them up specifically.
Let's address this issue then. Not my area of expertise, but it is, I did go to school for engineering, and one of the 101 things you learn in environmental engineering, civil engineering, is that when you pave over grass like that, that's 2 lots, that's 2 houses that were there. When you pave over something like that, you're going to have water runoff. And I don't know if, given the lack of requirements for people to do anything here when they build these things, they darn sure better not flood our backyards with the runoff from this thing. Not to mention, with this was a low occupancy area. You're putting in a business, it's going to be high occupancy. They will flush their toilets, they will wash their dishes, they will do untold things there with the water, and it will all be going into the sewers there. Has there been any study on the carrying capacity of the sanitary sewers for this kind of development here? I mean, I'm concerned that I'm going to have poo in my basement because of this kind of thing.
All of those things are required when they go for permit. They check for site grading, site utilities. Engineer has to verify all the connections.
Well, I know
thoroughly
with an
vetted.
acre development, they have to come up with a stormwater plan. I'm not sure, given the lack of requirements for them to do anything over here, I want to make sure that they're addressing where their water is going to go, because there's going to be a lot of water coming off of that.
It is contemplated in the plans. Ken, I don't know if you want to speak to it briefly.
I can't address the city's infrastructure, but I would assume that with all the development, that's part of city planning, and that I have confidence that the city engineers will make sure that we don't back up the toilets. But as far as the drainage through the parking, the people behind us actually, his property is actually higher than ours. So the water is actually going to be diverted to the street. So the plan is to build a shallow retaining wall or have the parking lot depressed slightly over here so that their water does not come onto ours. That was one of our concerns, that water from their property would potentially flood out this. So what we've done is just the water runs naturally down to 23rd Street, so we're just proposing a small curb along here on the east side so that water from the neighborhood here and from the subway will go to 23rd Street, and all of the drainage from the parking lot will be directed through the grading of the parking lot in a swell from the back of the parking lot, around the building, and then down to 23rd Street. So we are definitely not putting any water on any of the surrounding properties on any side except for 23rd Street. And with that, again, the storm drainage system, that's the normal way to develop.
What is your height of the fence?
I'm sorry?
The height of the fence, you have a retaining wall, and then a fence above.
Well, no, there's an existing fence back here along the south. I didn't mean to confuse the issue. We're planned on leaving the existing fences in place. There's one to the south and one to the west. This retaining wall that we're talking about would only be about 3 to 6 inches above the existing grade along the subway side, and it would just be a simple concrete wall, probably about 18 inches tall. It's more or less a raised curb just to allow that transition. Our parking lot back here will be about 12 to 18 inches lower than the subway side. And part of that was done, again, just to set the grade of the building as such so that it would be accessible. We were trying to avoid having a whole series of switchbacks or anything like that. We were trying to get a shallow walk to make it as friendly and as urban friendly as possible instead of having a series of switchback ramps. This is our preferred approach here is a 1 to 20 walkway along the west side to reach the entry.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Questions, comments, motions? That's a move for approval by Mr. Robinson. Do we have a second? Long Nguyen seconds that. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this item is approved. Thank you very much. Other business, item 7A, resolution.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution on the agenda today acknowledging the service of Lisa Chronister, her valuable service to the Commission. Whereas Lisa Chronister has faithfully devoted her time and expertise to serve the citizens of Oklahoma City as an Urban Design Commission member from March 2011 to April 2014. And whereas the commission has benefited greatly from Lisa Cronister's proficient skill and technical aptitude as an architect, and whereas Lisa Cronister has routinely contributed to the commission through her comprehensive knowledge and adept analysis of architectural design, historic preservation, and aesthetic sensibility, and whereas Lisa Cronister has demonstrated uncommon dedication to the commission through her methodical attention to detail and earnest regard for the applicable standards and guidelines in consideration of projects presented to the commission, and whereas Lisa Cronister's participation in the commission deliberations has always been characterized by a steadfast and constant perseverance to promote the revitalization and enhancement of the various design districts subject to commission review, and whereas Lisa Cronister has consistently treated applicants, citizens, fellow commissioners, and staff with respect and courtesy, and whereas Lisa Cronister's sincerity, collaborative spirit, and compassionate nature have served the community well in resolving conflicts and offering sound technical and creative advice to applicants, now therefore be it resolved that the Urban Design Commission hereby respectfully commends Lisa Cronister for her outstanding years of service to the Urban Design Commission and the City of Oklahoma.
Excellent. Good.
I wanted to say for those who don't know, I'm going to work with Paula and Michael starting Friday. So that's why I'm not resigning so much as I'm the other side. I will see you.
Excellent. Can we have a motion on that resolution? You have a second, Mr. Robeson? Mr. Struble seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That resolution carries. Thank you. Michael, 8A?
We just have one item. It was in a residential project in the portion of the commercial area of Paseo, and they had previous approval from 2012, and they simply added some stairs, a couple of stairs and a sidewalk that led to the street, and revised the design of ADA ramp.
Okay, great, thank you. Any comments from planning staff?
We have received the surveys from the Cottage District. I don't know if I told you that last time or not. I think we just got them since the last meeting. So I've had a chance to go through them briefly. By and large, we got I think 24 surveys turned back in from Mr. Bleakley. By and large, people are pretty supportive of the way things are being handled out there, both in the manner it's being handled and by the fact that it is being handled by the UDC as opposed to some other body. There are some areas that they would like to see adjustments in. There's a fair amount of people that want to see the name of the district changed, and the two leading contenders are Midtown Heights and south of St. Anthony's. And I'm not sure how we're going to break that tie, but they're pretty close. South of St. Anthony's. So. About 7 or 8 people, I believe it was, wanted to see some expansion of the boundary of the district. Primarily, it seemed to the north and west of the current boundaries, although there were some other variations in other areas as well. And as far as standards are concerned, everybody seems to want to get rid of that 24-inch elevation standard, and I don't think that we have any concerns about doing that. There are a divergence of opinions about what to do with some of the setback requirements, so we're going to have to kind of weed through that and figure out what can be best done. And the other predominant theme is that there are a number of people who want to see provisions written into the regulations to protect their views. And it's not necessarily clear which views they're talking about, although in a few cases some people did come out and say they want the view of the downtown skyline protected. And I'm not sure how you do that in the district when the buildings that would affect it are outside the district, but that's another issue. So basically I'm going to be going through those surveys in more detail over the course of the next probably 3 weeks or so. And once I have a better handle on the exact details of all the questions that were asked, we're probably going to meet with Mr. Bleakley again and see if we can get some consensus in what he thinks the direction we're planning to take the changes are. And then once that happens, we're going to be dovetailing that into kind of a overarching look at all of the standards that the commission uses in terms of regulations as well as the guidelines, and looking at probably an overhaul of all of those standards, hopefully sometime later this year.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Any other comments?
No.
From staff? Comments from commissioners? Any? No. Okay. Next meeting date, you can read that in your agenda. Lisa, would you like to make a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Okay, that is a motion by Cronister, second by Fitzsimmons. All in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.